Hello students, let us learn the third chapter of your English textbook First Flight today. The name of the chapter is Two Stories About Flying. This chapter includes two parts, namely his first flight and the black aeroplane. Both stories are related to the experience of flying and are completely unique. The first one, his first flight, is written by Liam O'Flaherty and is about a young seagull who is afraid of flying. Here we will find why he is afraid and how he finally succeeded in flying. In the second part, we have another story, The Black Aeroplane, written by Frederick Forsyth. The Black Aeroplane is all about a pilot who got stuck in the storm clouds and how he escapes death miraculously. Today in this video, we will deal with the first part, his first flight by Liam O'Flaherty. Before we get started, let us find out some details about the writer, Liam O'Flaherty. He was born on 28 August 1896 and died on 7th September 1984. He was a major Irish novelist and short story writer. This story, his first flight, has a very beautiful theme. It tells us about courage and self-confidence and how one has to overcome his fear. It highlights the importance of independence, self-belief, confidence, and the need for motivation to attain goals. This story, his first flight, reminds us of the words of Franklin D. Roosevelt. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. It teaches us the great lesson that self-confidence is the key to great success and achievements. His first flight by Liam O'Flaherty is an account of a young seagull that is afraid to make his first attempt in flying. He lacks self-confidence. He doesn't trust his wings and he believes that they would not support him to fly. So he never makes an attempt to fly. Despite his younger siblings flying fearlessly with much shorter wings, he could not gather the courage to fly. He was even punished to stay hungry if he did not fly. And finally, it was his mother that compelled him to fly by using food as a trap. This story gives us a strong message that one should trust one's abilities because the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. As it is said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. We should be brave enough to make that first step. Now let us get into the chapter in detail. His first flight by Liam O'Flaherty. The young seagull was alone on his ledge. His two brothers and his sister had already flown away the day before. He had been afraid to fly with them. Somehow, when he had taken a little run forward to the brink of the ledge and attempted to flap his wings, he became afraid. The great expanse of sea stretched down beneath, and it was such a long way down, miles down. He felt certain that his wings would never support him, so he bent his head and ran away back to the little hole under the ledge where he slept at night. As I told you, the story is all about a young seagull that is at that stage of its life where he has to learn to fly. He lacks self-confidence and so he is afraid to make the first attempt in flying. All the family members, including his siblings, his brothers and sister, and parents, give him courage and help him to make his first attempt in flying. But he is too afraid to make the first step. Unlike his younger brothers and sister, he is too afraid to fly. When all of them went for flying for the first time near the edge of the sea, all of them except him succeeded. He could not trust his wings. He got terrified by the expanse or the vastness of the sea, and he strongly believed that he could never fly. As a result, he was ashamed and disheartened and thus went inside the ledge where he usually slept. Even when each of his brothers and his little sister, whose wings were far shorter than his own, ran to the brink, flapped their wings and flew away, he failed to muster up courage to take that plunge which appeared to him so desperate. His father and mother had come around, calling to him shrilly, upbraiding him, threatening to let him starve on his ledge unless he flew away. But for the life of him, he could not move. The young seagull's younger siblings managed to take their first flight despite their wings being shorter than his. But he could not summon or muster up the courage to jump from the ledge. though he tried so desperately. He was even scolded by his parents for not trying again, and they even threatened him that if he would not try, he would starve. They said he would get no food if he didn't try to fly, but he was so afraid that he could not even move. That was 24 hours ago. Since then, nobody had come near him. The day before, all day long, he had watched his parents flying about with his brothers and sister, perfecting them in the art of flight and teaching them how to skim the waves and how to dive for fish. He had in fact seen his older brother catch his first herring and devour it standing on a rock, while his parents circled around raising a proud cackle. And all the morning, the whole family had walked about on the big plateau midway down the opposite cliff, taunting him with his cowardice. Now the young seagull had been quite alone for a day, for long 24 hours after he tried to make his first attempt in flying. He is left alone on the ledge because his parents were busy focusing on his siblings, his brothers and sisters. Because they did what he didn't do. He watched his parents perfecting his siblings the art of skimming. Skimming is moving quickly over the vast surface of the ocean. His parents helped his brothers and sister master the art of flying and how to dive for a fish. His older brother even caught his first fish, which he proudly ate at a rock, while his parents celebrated that. The entire family looked at him from the plateau opposite the cliff. That morning, his parents taunted him, insulted him, all the way for being a coward. The sun was now ascending the sky, blazing on his ledge that faced the south. He felt the heat because he had not eaten since the previous nightfall. He stepped slowly out to the brink of the ledge and standing on one leg with the other leg hidden under his wing, he closed one eye, then the other, and pretended to be falling asleep. Still, they took no notice of him. The sun had now risen, and the young seagull was feeling the heat more than ever because he was empty stomach since the night before. He hadn't eaten anything for the past 24 hours. Slowly, he stepped out of his ledge and pretended to sleep on one leg to gain the attention of his family. Still, no one noticed him. No one took care of him. They were busy doing their own work. He saw his two brothers and his sister lying on the plateau, dozing with their heads sunk into their necks. His father was preening the feather on his white back. Only his mother was looking at him. She was standing on a little high hump on the plateau, her white breast thrust forward. Now and again she tore a piece of fish that lay at her feet, and then scraped each side of her beak on the rock. The sight of the food maddened him. How he loved to tear food that way, scraping his beak now and again to wet it. His brothers and sister were sleeping. His father was preening or cleaning his feathers with his beak, and his mother was standing on another plateau cutting fish while she noticed him, because her mother's heart was beating for him, because she knew that her son had not eaten anything for a long time. She was cutting the meat with her beak and sharpening her beak now and then. The young seagull got mad on seeing the fish because he had not eaten anything for a long time. He was feeling very, very hungry. Since he had not eaten anything for a long time, or for 24 hours, he wanted to eat the fish. He loved to tear the fish the way his mother was tearing, and he wanted to wet or sharpen his beak now and then. Ga, 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 he cried, begging her to bring him some food. Ga, call, ah, she screamed back derisively. But he kept calling plaintively, and after a minute or so, he uttered a joyful scream. His mother had picked up a piece of fish and was flying across to him with it. He leaned out eagerly, tapping the rock with his feet, trying to get nearer to her as she flew across. But when she was just opposed to him, she halted, her wings motionless, the piece of fish in her beak almost within reach of his beak. He waited a moment in surprise, wondering why she did not come nearer, and then, maddened by hunger, he dived at the fish. The young seagull cried in hunger to his mother while his mother screamed back angrily and mockingly, but he kept crying, which soon turned into a joyful scream, at the sight of his mother flying towards him with a piece of fish. Finally, he had a ray of hope that his mother was flying towards him with a small piece of fish in her beak. He got excited as she came nearer, and thus he leaned forward to take the piece of fish from her mouth. Suddenly, she stopped not too far away from him. He was surprised to see that because he never expected that his mother will be stopping just a little distance away from him. And he wondered why she stopped there. Out of excitement and hunger, he dived at the fish without realizing for a moment that he was afraid to fly once. With a loud scream, he fell outwards and downwards into space. Then a monstrous terror seized him and his heart stood still. He could hear nothing, but it only lasted a minute. The next moment, he felt his wings spread outwards. The wind rushed against his breast feathers, then under his stomach and against his wings. The young seagull was that hungry and he got mad, and when he jumped out of the ledge, he fell downwards into the space. A horrible fear seized him. He was totally terrified. For a moment, he was in shock and his heart stood still. But later, he got so excited that he fell as soon as he tried. All this happened only for a moment, and soon his feathers opened and he flied. He could feel the wind against his breast feathers, stomach, and his wings. Delightfully or happily, he realized that he was flying. There was a time when he thought he wouldn't be able to do that, but now he does it. He could feel the tips of his wings cutting through the air. He was not falling headlong now. He was soaring gradually downwards and outwards. He was no longer afraid. He just felt a bit dizzy. Then he flapped his wings once and he soared upwards. Ga, 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 ga. Ga, call, ah. His mother swooped past him, her wings making a loud noise. He answered her with another scream. Then his father flew over him screaming. He saw his two brothers and his sister flying around him, curveting and banking and soaring and diving. The young seagull could feel himself cutting through the air. He was not nose diving as he thought. He was not afraid anymore because he could hold himself in the air and he could fly. He was just a bit nervous and he felt a little unsteady, but then his mother accompanied him. She appreciated him. The whole family screamed out of excitement. They flew along with him. They all supported him. They made loud noise and celebrated his victory over fear. Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly, and commanded himself to dive and soar and curve, shrieking shrilly. He was near the sea now, flying straight over it, facing straight out over the ocean. He saw a vast green sea beneath him, with little ridges moving over it, and he turned his back sideways and cawed amusedly. Once he overcame the fear of flying, the young seagull forgot that he was once afraid of flying. He did all those things once he feared. He flew straight over the sea and he could see the greenery and the mountains beneath him. He screamed out of joy as he enjoyed the victory. His parents and his brothers and sister had landed on this green flooring ahead of him. They were beckoning to him, calling shrilly. He dropped his legs to stand on the green sea. His legs sank into it. He screamed with fright and attempted to rise again, flapping his wings. The entire family had already landed on the green flooring before he landed. Here, green flooring is the surface of the sea. His parents, brothers and sister, they all were already floating on the sea. They were beckoning to him shrilly, calling him in sharp, high-pitched voice. But his legs sank into it. He got scared and screamed out of fear, and he made an effort to rise again, flapping his wings to fly upwards. But he could not do that. But he was tired and weak with hunger, and he could not rise, exhausted by the strange exercise. His feet sank into the green sea, and then his belly touched it, and he sank no farther. He was floating on it, and around him his family was screaming, praising him, and their beaks were offering him scraps of dogfish. He had made his first flight. The young seagull could not succeed in flying upward because he was very tired. He was really exhausted. That's why he could not rise. When he landed on the sea, the entire family was screaming and shouting in excitement in their high-pitched voices. He then went into the sea, where at first he got scared and thus he panicked. Because when he set his feet in water, unlike the rock, it went down. So he tried to escape but got tired and weak because of hunger. Thus, when he calmed down, he started floating on the sea. Once he was afraid of doing that. His family was celebrating in excitement and offered him food as praise and appreciation. Finally, he had overcome his fear and he had made his first flight. At last, he did all those things that he once thought he could not do. The young seagull could succeed only because of one single reason, that he was able to drive away the fear of failure and he trusted himself. Here in this chapter, we learn a very important lesson, that we should not expect a change if we don't make one. We cannot succeed in our life if we don't trust ourselves. We will never overcome our fear if we don't have self-confidence. That's all the chapter. Now read the chapter well and watch the video again. Then answer all the questions given under the heading Comprehension Check. While I explain the chapter, the meanings of the difficult words were displayed here. Copy them also into your English notebook. Send that to my WhatsApp number before 2 p.m. today. Thank you for watching.